situation. We don't know. And if the drugs are all expired and the equipment on it isn't maintained, then that can put women at risk.
The clinic would also release women after their abortions without providing post-abortion counseling so women could protect their health and safety. It also failed to keep the facility clean. Operation Rescue wants the clinic shut down, but considering it's in Illinois, it's not likely. It took years to convince state officials to shut down a Rockford abortion mill that was cited repeatedly. I'm Charlie Butts.
And British officials plan to lift some night flight restrictions to ease travel backups from the drone-induced closure of London's Gatwick Airport. Transport Secretary Chris Grayling told Sky News the temporary move is needed because of the problems at Gatwick. Grayling did not provide details about where night flights would be allowed and apologized in advance to residents who might be affected. Meanwhile, experts say it's not as easy as you might think when it comes to efforts preventing people from flying drones at or near airports.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Two Christian artists in Arizona could face jail time if they refuse to make custom artwork for same-sex weddings. The business owners are challenging a local anti-discrimination ordinance that they say goes against their religious values. The Arizona Supreme Court just announced it will hear their case in January.
I could create chaos within the election, but certainly not that they actually impacted it. The only reason that the president is the president is because he was a better candidate and beat Hillary Clinton. We also know that the president never colluded with Russia. So that's the whole reason that we have this, and we know those things to be false.
100%. Because when you ask voters, when Trump talks about a wall, do you think he means a physical border wall? Or do you think he means enhanced border security that will include a wall in part, but will also include stepped-up surveillance? Democrats think he's talking a wall. Republicans, a majority of them think it's kind of this mix.
Now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome to the show. It's Christmas. I'm so excited about it. I cannot believe how wonderful it is to be alive yet again for another Christmas season. And as I see people moving about, you know, being busy, getting stuff done, and really kind of, I don't know, just enjoying the opportunity to be alive and to have Christmas, it's a blessing. It's a total blessing. And so I'm not saying I don't care what's in the news. I do. But I do care more about celebrating this season and being grateful and full of gratitude for the opportunity that we have as Americans here in our country to just partake of really an outsized amount of prosperity, the goodness and mercy of the Lord, and fellowship with each other. And that means, I'm talking about everybody, the people who annoy me and the ones that I love to be around equally. I'm just excited to see everybody. And that's the goodness of the Lord, because I don't have that naturally within myself. That's something that the Lord is doing, and I'm so grateful for it. Welcome to the program. It's Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And we have a beautiful show programmed for you today. We are going to be speaking with a number of guests. We're going to speak to Dennard, and we're going to be chatting with him about news of the day, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're also going to talk about the one disastrous crime, according to Newt Gingrich, is one disastrous crime that the Democrats are they're on the edge of something like that happening with an illegal immigrant or something of that nature, from them looking bad for their stance that they're taking, which really supports lawlessness. And then, of course, you heard a little tease there of the Christians who are facing a huge fine and jail time for refusing to do artwork for gay weddings. homosexual weddings, same-sex weddings. And so, this is happening in America. Remember when these stories were things we used to talk about and they were coming from over the pond? It was Great Britain and other countries that were, on the leading edge of this thing, Canada. And we'd say, oh, yeah, that's happening over there. Though those people are, engaging in that. Now we're here in America and people are being driven out of their businesses. And I can't imagine why anyone who's a Christian and is in the art world of any kind in the service industry would live in some place like Oregon. Like, why would you do it? Like, why wouldn't you immediately just pack up and start over again, preemptively striking out against what is going to happen with these people? So I want to get into the daily confession for today. And I just can't get enough of the goodness of the Lord and how he, in his wisdom and be all-knowing, all-seeing, omniscient, alpha, omega self, has the ability to work around our human failings. And so he knows already that we're going to fail, but he makes provision for that, enabling us to still accomplish what he has for us to do. And so today's daily confession is God can and will use us to fulfill his purposes even after we fall. Now, this does not contradict my comments about pastors and others who, they're in leadership and then they fall from grace and sometimes are forced to leave ministry. It doesn't mean that they still don't have work to do for God and they can't be redeemed, but that's a different conversation. What I'm talking about is here in personal land, and knowing that we're not perfect, and even when we set the highest of standards for ourselves, we miss the mark. So Romans 4:13-22 says, "It was not through the law that Abraham and his offspring received the promise that he would be heir of the world, but through the righteousness that comes by faith. For if those who depend on the law are heirs, faith means nothing and the promise is worthless, because the law brings wrath. And where there is no law, there is no transgression. Therefore, the promise comes by faith, so that it may be by grace and may be guaranteed to all Abraham's offspring, not only to those who are of the law, but also to those who have the faith of Abraham. He is the father of us all. As it is written, I have made you a father of many nations. He is our father in the sight of God, in whom he believed, the God who gives life to the dead and calls into being things that were not. Against all hope, Abraham in hope believed and so became the father of many nations. Just as it had been said to him, so shall your offspring be. Without weakening in his faith, he faced the fact that his body was as good as dead, since he was about 100 years old, and that Sarah's womb was also dead. He did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God, being fully persuaded that God had power to do what he promised. This is why it was credited to him as righteousness. Now, what am I talking about here? Well, when God told Abraham that he would be a father of many nations, he was already old. He didn't tell him this when he was still young and there were still possibilities. He was already old, his wife was already old, and they were barren. Now, this work was already done. God told Abraham, I have made you the father of many nations. It's similar to when Joshua was going into battle with the Israelites, the mighty men of valor, against the people in the promised land. And he was not sure of what was going to happen. And God came to him and said, I have already given them into your hand. So this was already a done deal, but he had to walk it out. Now, this speaks to the covenant that is between God and us, an everlasting covenant that was confirmed with Abraham and all those who would come from him. Hosea 2:19-20 says, I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you in righteousness and justice. In love and compassion, I will betroth you in faithfulness, and you will acknowledge the Lord. This everlasting covenant, it goes on forever. It's also proof, the story of Abram and Sarai, or who came to be known as Abraham and Sarah, is also proof that even when we fall, God still has provision for us to satisfy and accomplish what he has set out for us to do. So the fact that Sarah told Abraham to impregnate their slave to bring about this fulfillment of what God had told him he would do, and they were outside of God's will, and that was sin, and that was not what God had for them. They had Ishmael. Abraham enjoyed him and was his father, and he was 13 years old, Ishmael was, before they actually had their own child. But none of the things that they did that were outside of what God had for them prevented God from still utilizing them to accomplish his will. And so this goes for, let's take, for example, what we were discussing yesterday, President Trump, and he's had extramarital affairs, and and these things make us ineffectual. The Bible tells us that. But it doesn't mean, even look at David. David had Bathsheba, and that horrible little, portion of his life where he was outside of God's will. God still used him. We can still be used of God even in the midst of our failings. And so the encouragement and the confession for us today is that, yeah, we're running after righteousness. We're looking for obedience. But if we're in the valley, or if we're in the place where our decisions, our actions are catching up with us, and we feel like, there's no way God can ever use me. I'm broken. I'm done. No, that's not so. That is not so. God can still use us to fulfill his purposes, and he will. Whatever your mark is, whatever the goal is that you're shooting towards, that you've been loosed from the quiver, you are that arrow, you're going forward. Whatever it is that you're called to do, you're still going to accomplish that through Christ, the work of Christ on the cross, and the forgiveness and redemption that we can receive as God's children. This everlasting covenant would be to Abraham and his descendants, those to whom righteousness has been credited as a result of their faith in God, who raised Christ Jesus from the dead. So this is Gentile believers as well, and to those who, through faith in the seed of Abraham, which is Christ Jesus, would become a part of the people of God. So today, whatever it is that God has for you to do, you can still accomplish it. All we have to do is repent and turn away from our sin and keep moving towards that mark. God uses all of us, the broken pots, the chipped shards of vessels. We're none of us that perfect, little untouched, beautiful little creation. We're all fallen, and we're all in need of a Savior. But once we've struck out and received Christ, now we're on the way to accomplishing what God has for us to do. And so we cannot become discouraged. We cannot give up on the work that God has called us to do. So going into, the actual Christmas season, where we have just a few days left until we actually celebrate, I want encouragement. I want people to feel uplifted and excited, and knowing that going out of this year, going out strong, going into the new year strong, that God has work for you to do. He has work for me to do. And we are able to do it through Christ Jesus. And there's nothing that can keep us from what God has for us. We need only believe and have faith and know that the covenant exists and that it is for us. It is between God and us, and we can do it. So that's a daily confession for today. So now I want to turn to some audio from Newt Gingrich. It's pretty interesting that he is calling out the fact that the Democrats are all dancing a jig, literally. There's video of Nancy Pelosi over at the Gateway Pundit kicking up her heels and cutting a little mean rug to some guitar music by one of the outgoing Democratic reps. And she's in victory mode. She feels like she has defeated President Trump on the wall. There'll never be a wall. She's going to be the speaker. Things are looking up for her. But the Bible says not to covet the spoils of the wicked, because they're not keeping that. They don't keep that. So here's Newt Gingrich talking about what could be a really real possibility for the Democrats. It's number 4.
Well, and they may win for 2 weeks, but I think the president's probably trying to get past the Christmas season. I've always thought, having been through shutdowns when I was speaker, I don't think shutting the government down on Christmas Eve is a particularly big win for anybody. And I think it's a pain in the neck for the hundreds of thousands of families that are affected directly by it. So the president has not given up yet. And I do think the issue of whether the Democrats, they're one really disastrous crime away from looking really bad. There are problems with people coming to the U.S. illegally. There are people who commit crimes who come to the U.S. illegally. MS-13 is a threat. Right. And I think for the Democrats to decide they don't want to protect America, is a tough position for them to take.
That's right. Emboldening the enemies of America, which is what they've done with their little, they have the little activists who've gone down to El Salvador and Honduras and ginned up these caravans. We've now seen a little, illegal immigrant child die from heat exhaustion. And there are others who are being treated. They're very ill because the journey has been very long. And I also saw a story about the reason why, because you would think if you look at the geography, if you just pull out a map, pull up your Google, whatever, you'll see that when you're coming from South America, the most direct route to the United States that brings you to our border the most expeditiously takes you right to the heart of Texas. But that's not the best place to enter because of the laws of Texas and because of the way enforcement is handled there. So, and there's not a friendly court system there. So if you get into the country, the courts there are most likely to turn you around and send you back. But in California, you're governed by the Ninth Circuit, which means you're going to get in and you're going to get to stay and disappear into the interior of the country. And California is a sanctuary state. So that's why they make the extra 1,400-mile journey to get there instead of just going 1,000 miles to Texas. This is not an accidental occurrence. When we get back, we're going to have more for you. Stay right there.
Here's American Family Association President Tim Wildman.
Lynn Ingram and Jim Duncan, two Texans, support and believe in our ministry here at AFA and AFR.
We know more about the laundry business than anything else. We know a little bit about a lot of things, but we know a lot about the laundry and dry cleaning business.
They created a laundry detergent to sell to folks to support AFA.
We just want to be able to provide a product that can be used by AFA to support the ministry.
When you wash your family's clothes with Redeem Clean laundry detergent, you can take great satisfaction in knowing that you're supporting the vital work of the American Family Association. It's a unique way to increase your giving to AFA. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more about the Redeem Clean products when you visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. Remember the old I love you computer virus? When you opened the I love you email, it proceeded to bring down your system with a vengeance. It promised love, but it delivered destruction. It never was what it claimed to be. Are we who we claim to be? Whenever there's disunity in the body of Christ, it's like a computer virus. It destroys the system and the integrity of what we do from within. God's heart is for us to be one just as the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are one. Jesus prayed that prayer in John chapter 17. It's a passionate plea. Remember, he's getting ready to die on the cross. He's talking to God the Father, and in his prayer, he's talking about his followers and the future followers of Christ. Listen to his plea for unity in John chapter 17, verses 22 and 23. The glory that you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one even as we are one. I in them and you in me, that they may become perfectly one, so that the world may know that you sent me and loved them even as you loved me. Incredible. People can see God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit through the body of Christ. The signature of God is unity. This is why the devil takes his biggest shots at the unity of the body of Christ. He wants to project to this unbelieving world, look at these folks. They talk about love, but they don't possess the real thing. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. We must be aggressive in resolving conflicts and breaking down barriers that divide us. Let's move toward the heart of God. Let's be the answer to Jesus' prayer for unity.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org. Join Crawford tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Nancy Pelosi is my source for legal authority on probably anything, but I would use attorneys that work here at the White House and in agencies that that's their entire job, is determining whether or not something is legal, and we're looking to those individuals to find out those specific pots of money that can be used for that.
A bonus amount of money that is sort of reprogrammed by Congress won't be necessary for the president's signature on this budget bill.
We would like to see Congress pass an appropriations bill that fully funds our government and that allows the president to protect our border and provides substantial border security funding, both for the wall, for CBP, for ICE, all of DHS. But in the meantime, we're also looking at other avenues that would allow us to provide and do our constitutional authority and the president to be able to carry that out by protecting our border and protecting American citizens. I'd encourage you guys to tune in to the president's event. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
So the big news for today over all of that is that the president has now come out and he said he's going to veto the wall. A shutdown is now looming. Now, look, everybody was frustrated yesterday. It seemed like there was bad news over bad news over bad news. And when the Democrats said there was no way he was getting that money, not that money, his money, he's not getting the money for his wall, because this is personal for them. It's failed to be about keeping Americans safe, or they say they want to serve immigrants. These are not immigrants. They're unlawful entrants. They're aliens and they're lawbreakers. But regardless of how you feel about them, serving them doesn't involve allowing them to camp out in disease-filled stadiums along the southern border on the Mexico side. And it also doesn't permit in any way, shape, or form the kind of rhetoric that we've seen from people on the left. They are bent on putting America in a position where we cannot sustain ourselves. That's what the Fed chair hiking the rates is all about. He wants to tank the stock market. He wants to erase the gains that have been made since the tax reform worked so well. Proof that tax reform works, that lower taxes and less regulation works, goes right up against the socialist mantra. And the globalists want this country under the control of an autocracy that is atheistic. They don't want people having religious freedom or the right to own guns. They're not interested in you, starting your own business and becoming economically free. They want you tethered to the government. They want you on the brink. If you're upset and unable to take care of yourself, you're more easily controlled. A populace that's making money and hiring other people in this country and doing business here and abroad and shipping products all over the world, a populace that knows that if I have a great idea, I can bring it to fruition. I can throw in with my neighbors, with my Bible study group at church, and we can get some seed money together, and I can start this business. I can start selling stuff on Etsy, and in 5 years, I can have my own stand-alone storefront where I'm selling my stuff and I'm my own boss. That kind of empowerment, I can play Christian music in my workplace. I can set my little store up like an extension of my home with Christian scriptures on the wall, and moms that homeschool can have their kids in a couple days a week to work and learn entrepreneurship. That's not what they want. They want you looking at them and coveting their red jacket, Nancy Pelosi's red coat. They want you to look at her and see her as someone who's above us and untouchable, and she's someone that we need to look up to and admire. I'm even pulling back off of that. Who am I to admire that's an earthly vessel? No one. I have had a complete reversal on that this year. If there's anything we ought to know, if we want to be properly matured in Jesus Christ and to be properly disillusioned, is that there really aren't any human beings that are worth us admiring. We should reserve that kind of feeling and fervor for our Lord and Savior. And everyone else, that's someone who's trustworthy or they're not. But the kind of lofty acclamations that we make about each other set us up for failure. And it's also, especially on the left, I see a lot of, it's gone beyond hero worship. It's as if, the joke was Donald Trump could shoot someone on the streets of New York and his followers wouldn't care. And he even repeated it jokingly. I'm not sure that he meant that. And it became something that was associated with people on the right side of the political spectrum. But the fact is, Data from across society shows that people on the right are more law-abiding and more fearful of law enforcement and therefore less likely to commit crimes and do all of this garbage than people who ascribe to the Democrats' philosophies. It's not even close. So we have an opportunity. We always do. And I'm reserving judgment. I was pretty frustrated and disappointed yesterday. I'm not going to lie. And I'm sure you could hear that coming off during the show. But I'm waiting to see. Yesterday, William Geen was on the show, and he said, well, the president has made a lot of statements, like he said he'd end birthright citizenship, and he said it just before the election. Now we've heard nothing about it again, et cetera, et cetera. This story here is from CNBC.com. It talks about the Senate unanimously approving legislation Wednesday night to keep the government funded through February 8th, which, again, we're just hop, skip, and jumping, December to February. Then they have this big looming fight again, and they'll be threatening to shut stuff down again instead of having the regular budget appropriations process, which we have not had since Barack Obama. But, if wishes were rainbows and et cetera. With Trump's support, this legislation that was approved in the Senate was set to breeze through the House before the midnight Friday deadline to fund 7 agencies that make up, it says, about a quarter of the government. I thought it was like 13%, but be that as it may, it's not the whole government at all. It's not a shutdown that would shut down the entire government, not in the least. So Trump, who seeks $5 billion to build his proposed border wall, will refuse to sign the measure without his desired border security funding included. And this is according to Paul Ryan, outgoing king of budget busting appropriations, and another one who makes a lot of promises he can't keep and is secretly, openly a globalist. Someone who thinks, what do we need borders for? I just need a brick wall around my house. You know that he has a brick wall around his house, a wall. He doesn't think we should have one at the southern border, but Paul Ryan has a wall around his house, probably to protect his beautiful little children and his wife, which I totally respect. I just don't understand why we as a country can't do that. So then a statement by Sarah Huckabee Sanders said we urgently need funding for border security, and that includes a wall. Now, this article says the path forward for Congress is unclear, and there's a conservative member rebellion against the spending bill that they were trying to head off earlier today. And House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer flatly said Democrats would not approve money for the barrier. Now, Ryan took to the floor and was standing next to House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy and said that leaders are going to go back to the House and work with our members on a solution that includes border security funding. Now, I'm not sure why he would come out and even discuss anything that doesn't include border funding, because all of the members of the House that were elected in 2016 were brought in or reelected under the auspices of funding a border wall. That was the key component to the campaign for the presidency under Donald Trump. So the Republican Party platform, everything that was being said on the Republican side, the wall was central to that. They are still there up until December. Those are the members that were there that were elected in 2016 who came in with the president. And so there should be none of them that are quibbling over finding a way to get this done. And this is where we should have our little pens out and our little notepads, and we should be writing down for our districts, because it's hard enough to keep track of everything. But luckily, fortunately, not luckily, but fortunately for us, we only have to worry about the ones that we can vote for. So I wouldn't be worried about Paul Ryan, because obviously he's gone. He's done. But anyone who's incoming, who votes against wall funding, anyone who is there because they were elected in 2016 or they've been reelected in 2018, anyone who's going to be there after January, you look at the ones from your district, where you vote, and the ones who don't support funding the wall and the president's agenda, those are not team players. Those ones have to go next time. And you just write that on your note, and you put that note on your computer monitor, or put it in your notes and put it on the calendar for 2 years from, actually less than 2 years, because we're talking about November of 2020. So, when they start coming around, as they will, they'll be door knocking. They'll have their teenage and college age students out knocking doors with their T-shirts on. They'll be sending you emails. They'll be asking for donations. You can tell your state party you're supporting in the primary. You can say that you're in the primary. We have 2 candidates, and one of them has already shown that they don't support the president's agenda. So whether or not the president is reelected, this person cannot be reelected, and I will not donate to the state party, nor will I donate to their campaign because they don't support border security. Until we start doing that, we're going to continue to get these nincompoops running around, and they claim they're there on our behalf, and they're definitely getting paid by our tax dollars, but they're not doing anything. They are literally getting paid to do nothing. And I think we don't see that. I mean, have you ever ordered something and went to go pick it up, and the person is sitting around chatting, and then when you say, I'm here to pick up so-and-so, they'll say, oh, we haven't had time to do that. But they had time to sit there and talk. They could have been working on what they were supposed to be doing for you, but instead they were sitting around talking, and now they're complaining, well, whatever you want, whatever you'd like to do, getting smart and having an attitude. And you're thinking, why am I doing business with this place? Why am I giving these people my money? This person does not even do their job. That is what we're talking about with these elected officials, only they're not minimum wage workers. They're not at Walgreens in the photo department. They're in the houses of Congress, owned by us, paid for by us, our money, our buildings, our paper, all that stuff they're using, our electricity, and they won't even do the simple things. And it's not as if any of them are going to get voted out if they do fund the border wall. If they stand up to the Democrats, no, none of them are going to get hurt. It's not like they're getting beat up after Congress in the halls or anything, like the Democrats are bullying them physically. They might be doing some pretty severe mental warfare. They might be calling them names and doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, you saw the images of, it was Dianne Feinstein had Lisa Murkowski pushed into the recess of a wall and was towering over her with her arm up against the top of the ceiling. Like, it was just bizarre. And Murkowski should have said, get out of my way. And if she wouldn't, just push right past her and kept on moving. She didn't have to stand there and take that from her. Does she own her? I mean, I don't understand any of that. I don't understand that dynamic at all. And it's not because I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall that I don't understand that. I don't understand it because there isn't anybody who's a grown person who should allow another grown person who isn't using force of, they're not armed. If they're not armed, why would you allow someone who's the same size as you to bully you into a corner in a recess when you're a sitting member of Congress? Why? Why not just say, oh, I can't talk to you right now. Oop, I want to talk to you, but I can't. I'm sorry, I don't really want to talk to you. I got to go. And then just keep on going. Just keep walking. The Capitol Police are stationed in different parts of the Capitol building. She should have just walked up to one and said, I'm sorry, but she keeps on touching me. She keeps pushing me into recesses. Could you just escort me to my office real quick or escort me to my car? That's what they're there for. So we have to start doing our job. If they won't do their job, it's our job not to send them back there. And this is something for us to pray over the Christmas holidays. It's something for us to start to commit ourselves to thinking about, because it takes courage to stand up to wrongdoers. And I know we're courageous. I know we have Annas in this audience, prayer warriors. I know we have people who are there. Your position is one of, you are constantly going to the Lord and saying, you know what, God, I know this isn't your will. Have your way here. You're there already. Now we need that extra step, which is the courage to walk that out. Come out of our prayer closets, because we have to be in there first. Then come on out and start walking this thing out. You got friends who are bullying you and telling you, well, Donald Trump is an evil man and he's this and he's that. And then what do you say in response? You could just say, I'm sorry, we can't talk politics because we're too far apart and there's no way that we're going to come together. And so in order for us to enjoy each other's company, we should just talk about things that, make sense. And if they say, well, what do you mean we're too far apart? You're radicalized. You believe things that aren't true, and you're not willing to listen to the opposing side. So let's not talk about it. That's how you have to handle that. Just sitting quietly and allowing them to browbeat you and say bad things about Donald Trump and other Republicans, it's not okay anymore. That's not the tack we can take anymore. It's time for us to pick up our swords. It's time for us to start acting like we know what right and wrong is, and we know we're on the right side, and we know we're doing what God would have us to do, or if we're not, that we're going to start doing what God has for us to do, and to start defending our positions, because it's going to be time at some point to come off of defense and go on to offense. That is where we're supposed to be. Arrows are not exclusively defensive weapons. God describes us as arrows in the quiver. Arrows in the quiver. So you can defend yourself, but you can also launch an onslaught with an arrow. if you're in the aggressive posture and you have the high ground, an arrow is an offensive weapon fit to take down almost any enemy. And you know that God doesn't lie. He doesn't put things in the Bible and say, well, that's kind of what that means. It doesn't really mean that. I mean, it's like arrows figuratively. It's not. No, that's not how God operates. That's not how the Bible is written. Time and time again in the Bible, you see when God says, go out there and wipe it out, and the Israelites would go riding on in. And remember, the Bible describes the Israelites as being they're like almost miniature people. They're small in stature. They're not to demean or anything, but they're just not the biggest of people. If one of them is very, very tall, it's like a unique thing. So they would always go out into battle and be going against people who were much bigger than themselves. In fact, the Philistines were giants, and they took them down. One of the tiniest ones of them, David, as a little boy, got some smooth stones and was like, I serve the Most High. I'm taking him down. That's the attitude we should be praying for. We want to be like David. We want to have the absolute assurance down in our belly that we're serving God and that he goes before us. And when he says, run it down, burn it all down, destroy it, lay waste, it's already in your hand. It's already in your hand. It's behind you. Go forward and do it. It's time for us to start governing these elected officials. What more can we do? We hold the highest office in the land as citizens in a representative republic. When we get back, we'll have more for you. Stay right there.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
Too often I hear people say that they will make a difference later, once they've accomplished more, once they have more free time, once the kids are grown and gone. Don't let your age, your experience, or the call of success get in the way of your mission to touch the world for good. You're in a unique place that no one else occupies. Your family, your friends, and your workplace are all spheres of influence. Mentor leaders don't wait. They look for opportunities to get involved in the lives of people. If you pursue mentor leadership, God will ultimately use you for his good. Every platform you have is important in God's eyes.
Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible that says the heart of the fool inclines to the left just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Hi, I'm Larry Nix with Defining Moments. Join me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on Urban Family Talk. We talk to people of all ages, stages, phases, and places. From all walks of life, background, and cultures about serious matters, life-altering encounters, second chances, and even how to face life moving forward. Sometimes you hear us get emotional, sometimes you hear us laugh. But more importantly, you'll hear the truth that will set you free. All on Defining Moments every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on Urban Family Talk.
This is Just a Minute with Stacy Washington. Whenever a power-hungry activist wants to infringe upon religious liberty, they refer to the separation of church and state, an evil concept created by an activist judge to limit Christian participation in public life. While God does limit the spheres of influence controlled by the church and state, his limitations lead to more liberty. God is head over all and is unsurprised by the goings-on in our society and politics. He has ordained that free men would control their homes, the church, and the state. There is no separation. When godly men rule, the people rejoice. But when evildoers control a nation, citizens groan and wail. There is no substitute for the proper order of our lives and government under God's planning and direction. When Christians pull back, evil flourishes. The Bible mandates Christian influence in government, politics, and public life. It's up to us. I'm Stacy Washington. Find out more at stacyontheright.com.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We did. We filed in state court challenging Phoenix's ordinance. It actually threatens to put them in jail for 6 months for every day they violate this ordinance. 6 months, as well as onerous civil penalties. So they really had no choice but to file this action rather than wait and have to fight it from jail.
Okay, so you lost at the state level, and now it's going to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's agreed to hear it in January. What can we expect then?
I'm hoping that we can expect the court to reverse the lower court, because what's at issue here is whether artists and other Americans can be banished from the marketplace just because they disagree with the government's view. And it really transcends the marriage issue. It's any view. Artists cannot be coerced to express messages that violate their core convictions, no matter what side of the debate they're on.
So that is the attorney for the young women who it's like a calligraphy shop where they do wedding invitations, and they do other types of things as well. So the shop does a number of artistic endeavors. And if you come in there and you're a same-sex person, you want to throw a party for something, or you want to order some of their products for something, you're welcome to do so. It's only the wedding products, the wedding arm of their business, that they won't use their creative talents to do work for weddings. So they're preemptively filing suit to stop themselves from falling under this new law that would basically say 6 months in jail for every day that you refuse to make wedding products, and that's anyone in the wedding industry for this story. It is so smart it's so smart for us to see that happening, and for them to get out ahead of it with the Alliance Defending Freedom taking the case. They've been successful in the past, and so I'm excited to see them do that. And I want to point out that what they're doing is what I was describing last segment. That's courageous, them going out in front. They didn't say outright that they're willing to go to jail, but they're saying they want to prevent that from even being a possibility by filing suit before this can even go into effect and others can be impacted by it. So they're not going to wait for this governing body to try to run them out of business or put each of them in jail for 6 months for every day they refuse. They're getting out ahead of it and saying, yes, let's figure this thing out lawfully and legally before we're under pain of losing our business. Smart to do. So that's the first part. Now, and I'm not sure if we just listen to number 1 or number 2. Bear with me. I've got a lot going on here. But we have number 2 that we're supposed to be listening to next. I'm looking at my software here for my producer. So I want to take some calls. Okay, perfect. That was number 1. I want to take some calls. It's 866-963-2037. 866-963-2037. Let's take some calls after we listen to the conclusion where the ADF attorney explains the bankrupt race same-sex marriage comparison. And this is one to file away for your knowledge base. If you can explain this to someone, you may not change their mind, but they can understand that you're coming from a reasoned, well thought out perspective on the reason why same-sex marriage rights and same-sex, all that stuff has no comparison to innate characteristic civil rights, such as those given to black people because of previous wrongdoings that were enshrined in law by America. That used to be the law of the land here. This is number 2.
Well, absolutely, we understand it, and it's just flat wrong. If the free speech guarantees mean anything, they protect the author's pen and the painter's brush. And this old, tired analogy to race is just a bankrupt analogy that the Supreme Court has rejected not once, but twice in the Obergefell same-sex marriage decision, as well as in the Masterpiece Cake Shop decision. All right. They serve everyone. They don't express all messages, and that's critical distinction.
So this is something that I love it when we have attorneys who know that they're biblically based and they're assured that they're in the right because they've studied and they know the law and they know the case law that is appropriate here. And this attorney from ADF is explaining that if someone says, I will not serve same-sex people, so if you're in a same-sex relationship and you come in and you want to buy food, I'm not going to serve you. that is unlawful discrimination. But if you come in and you buy cakes and cookies, and I'll do one for your birthday, I'll do one for any occasion except anything having to do with your wedding, now you're in a different territory. You've not been discriminated against, especially since all of the wedding businesses that have been impacted by these rulings have a referral system where they know another cake shop that will do equally beautiful work for this couple that doesn't have the same biblical mandate against doing the work. And so this has over and over again been the case where the Christian business will refer the same-sex couple to another baker who will do beautiful work for them. And what they say is, no, you bow down, Christian. You are not going to send us someplace else. You will serve us in this way. You will endorse our marriage. You will go against what you believe as a Christian, because our rights to have sexual relations with whoever we want and so-called marry them, because it's not a real marriage. Marriage is a union between a man and a woman in the sight of God. So it's a triune bond, just like the Godhead. Anything other than that is just not marriage. When they say you're going to serve us, what they're really saying is you're going to renounce that belief that you have. Because in the end, who are they serving? Who are they serving? That's right. They're not serving God. There's only one. You can only go one way or the other. Am I right? Are there 3 or 4 different ways, or is there one versus the other? There's good, there's evil, there's right, there's wrong, there's truth, there's lies, there's Satan, and then there's God. Okay? All right. So that's good news that they're going to take this on and really jump ahead of the curve and do this. And I hope that they're successful. We'll have to pray that they will be successful. But they're an example of what I'm going for in this program today. Not only are we not to be discouraged and not to be downtrodden and not to allow what looks like a bunch of kind of bad news this week to drag us down, but we are also to take a proactive stance, going out because the Lord goes before us and taking the land. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And so I'm glad that they're doing that. So let's go to the phones. We have Monty in Virginia. Hey, Monty, thanks for calling the show today.
Stacey, I'll try to be very brief, but you are fast becoming a Sandy Rios, one of my favorite broadcasters early in the morning. And I just wanted to thank you, wish you a Merry Christmas, and just pray that this Trump wall, we can call it anything we want, but when you get on the topic about this borderline, it is ridiculous. I'm a fundraiser, F-U-N raiser, and a fundraiser that I know that we can go put bumper stickers on every car. We want the wall now. Put something together. You can go out and sell bumper stickers and all kinds of fundraising. And I promise you, Stacey, just like your wonderful broadcast, we, the people, can build that wall, bypass the senators and House Representatives. They are absolutely taking money under the table, becoming millionaires, and do not represent great Tupelo, Mississippi people like you. God bless you.
God bless you. Merry Christmas, Monty. I got to say, that's quite the compliment. Sandy Rios is an institution here at American Family Radio, so thank you for saying that. She's a powerhouse on in the morning, and really fun to listen to. She's very informative, and I'm so glad to be here among the folks at American Family Radio. Very grateful. The call lines are still open. We still have we have a few minutes where we can take some calls. 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Even if you don't agree, if you feel like, kind of all is lost and the president has been left to stand alone, I'd rather see him stand up alone and say, you know what, I made promises. And if I have to shut the government down to do it, and I'm only shutting down like a little less than a quarter of the government, then so be it, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'd rather see him do that and honor his commitment than go down and say, well, Paul Ryan won't support it and the Democrats are taking over in January. Yeah, that's right. They're taking over in January. Call them back. Bring the congressman back. They've already went home for Christmas. Y'all know, I said at the beginning of the show, I love me some Christmas. In fact, I have the little White House Christmas ornament collection. And last year's obviously was the first Christmas ornament that was under the Trump White House. And Trump is all about the bling. And so his White House Christmas ornament for 2017 was it's like really fancy. Well, this year, the 2018 ornament, I couldn't wait to see if my parents were going to get it. So I ordered it. and it just came in the mail, and it is so gorgeous. I will post it on my Instagram. You can go there and look at it. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable how cute they are. Now, all of them are nice. They're not expensive, so I'm not talking about anything like this is not like some collector thing that'll be worth millions of dollars one day. It won't. You can buy them secondhand on eBay. It's like, it's just a thing if you like them. And so I've been collecting them since my parents started giving them to me and my husband as a Christmas gift. Years ago when we first got married, they gave us one, and they were like one of your first ornaments for the tree. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. And because my family lives in the Metro DC area, my parents and my sister, and one of our big things to do as a family is to go to the White House. And we've been on the FBI agent tour 6 times, you know, where you get to go through the regular tour of the White House, and then you get to go down some special hallways with the special agent, and they give you some extra, it's just a little bit of extra access, and it's really nice to be able to do. And you can go through your congressperson or your senator and state senator to get one of those tours as well. It's not something that just no one can get. Anyone can do them. So we've done that tour a bunch of times, and so that's part of it is like my parents giving us those ornaments, and I don't know. It's one of those things where you kind of look at it and you're like, well, you know, I do love me some Christmas. And so I would hate to be the person who's suggesting that Congress people shouldn't be at home for Christmas. But you know what? You got a job to do. And you should have funded the wall back when y'all had control. And now you're in the lame duck. And if you have to do some procedural maneuvers, which is what the Democrats call it, so be it. Answer your promise. Do what you said you were going to do. Fund the wall. You were giving $10 billion, $11.4 billion, I think is the specific number, to South America. $5 billion of that will go to Mexico. And we're doing that because we don't need congressional appropriations to do it. Don't tell me there's not a way. As someone who used to study the Robert's Rules of Order book for the little moms groups I was in, we used Robert's Rules, and then I was on school board and we used Robert's Rules of Order. There are ways to get around. No. The Democrats are so good at it, they've patented it. Why can't the Republicans do it? Take off your sweater vests, pick up your swords, and figure out how to fund this wall. The president needs the money. The American people want to see it done. Don't believe these CNN polls. They're nothing. They're not true. All right, let's do quick. We got time for 2 quick calls. Sue in Tennessee, thank you so much for calling the show today.
Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it. Didn't hardly expect to get through. I wanted to talk a little bit about some things that you were talking about yesterday. There was some comments made about people that were pastors and in leaderships in churches, and they weren't able to manage their families. Was that one of the topics that we were discussing yesterday?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was.
Or was it? Oh, right. I have painfully been on the side of this, and in the way that we had a family member who was prodigal and came to want forgiveness. But throughout all the situation, it affected my husband to the point of depression, to the point of discouragement, and to the point of a resignation. And it just seems very, very hard because we want to chastise and use the scriptures to judge when we don't know the heart of the people involved. And it just hurts to be lumped into a bunch where you're always feeling like you're being criticized. And yet you have raised your children, you have taught them Scripture, you have done your best to admonish them, but when they become adults, and I'm not talking about teenagers, I'm talking about adults, they make choices on their own.
Sue, thank you so much for calling, and I agree with you that the adult kids, there's nothing you can do. You cannot control your adult children. You can pray for them, but I think the people who were commenting yesterday were speaking about pastors who have children still in the home, and I don't think it was a blanket statement to kind of condemn all pastors. It was obviously directed towards those who've had, some very, very difficult situations with their kids, and it doesn't mean that a pastor who has, a couple of wayward kids or whatever the case might be is a bad person. But the Bible says that those that would lead us in the church should be above reproach, and that their own household should be well managed and under control. And so that's what they're talking about. And so my heart goes out to you. I don't want to in any way seem like I'm condemning specific people other than what we were talking about yesterday during the discussion. And I think callers were just speaking out of frustration, because when you're going to the church house and you're looking for preaching, teaching, and leadership, you're looking for discipleship, and the person who is, in charge of that and is supposed to be giving that to you can't adequately give that to you because they've got their own things going on. It takes away from what the body can receive. And that's why God calls for those who lead to be, of no reproach, unreproachable. We have some callers. I'm going to ask you to hold on. We want to talk to you, especially about this border wall issue. We'll be back with more after this. If you're leaving us now, we get it. 1 hour on AFR. And we're grateful for it. You will have One News Now, news and information up next. And I will be here for one more. So God bless you from the Heartland, and keep it here.
Urban Family Talk.
You only want to donate to biblically sound organizations. So as a federal or state employee, why not choose the American Family Association Combined Federal Campaign Designation 12037? Of the organizations on the CFC list, AFA is one of the few standing for you and your family. By choosing 12037, you help make it possible for us to continue.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. Will he or won't he? That is the question involving President Trump and a bill to keep the government open for the next 2 months. House Speaker Paul Ryan said today that the president will not sign the measure, citing a dispute over border wall funding. Earlier this month, President Trump told Democrats Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer that he would take responsibility for a partial government shutdown if border wall funding is not included.
I'll take it. Okay, good. You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And
We
I am
disagree.
proud, and I'll
We
tell you what,
disagree.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle.
Well, Congress has approved a bipartisan criminal justice reform measure, handing President Trump a legislative victory championed by the White House. Supporters say the First Step Act is not only needed, but long overdue when it comes to policing and jailing people for various things, including drug offenses. Critics have called it an early release bill. America's population growth has slowed to a level not seen since the Great Depression. Fox's Jack Callahan has details.
Between July of 2017 and July of this year, the country's population grew by just 0.6%. That's its slowest rate since 1937. The U.S. Census Bureau blames an aging population, more people dying, fewer having babies. And the numbers also show the population is shifting toward the South and the West at the expense of the Northeast and the Midwest. Nevada, Idaho, and Utah are the fastest growing states. 9 states, New York, Illinois, Connecticut, Alaska, Hawaii, Louisiana, Mississippi, West Virginia, and Wyoming, all lost population. Jack Callahan, Fox News.
Buyer beware. The government is looking into a possible problem with a popular pickup truck. Fox's Lillian Wu reports.
A probe underway after some drivers complained the steering can fail on some Ram pickup trucks. The investigation by the National Highway Safety Administration covers about 200,000 Ram 2500s from 2015 and 2016 model years. One injury reported, and officials saying they got 2 complaints that the linkage between the steering box to the front wheels can come apart. One owner saying that happened while rounding a curve at 65 to 70 miles an hour, causing the driver to lose steering. The problem traced to a mechanism used to align the steering system.
A church in Maryland has received an early Christmas present. The city of Laurel made changes to its zoning laws, something Alliance Defending Freedom says forced houses of worship to submit to an expensive, time-consuming, and uncertain special exception process that was not imposed on non-religious organizations. ADF filed a lawsuit in February on behalf of Redemption Community Church, which attorney Christiana Holcomb says holds Sunday worship services in the downtown area and serves the underprivileged in the community.
The government can't discriminate against churches just because they're religious. The city of Laurel, Maryland had told Redemption Community Church to either stop worshiping in its own building or pay severe fines. But the lawsuit has prompted city officials to recognize that neither federal law nor the First Amendment allow for that kind of discrimination.
Despite the city's reversal, Redemption Community Church versus City of Laurel will continue before a federal magistrate judge until it is formally resolved. In the meantime, Redemption Community Church is holding worship services again in the downtown area. And in the run-up to Christmas, online shopping continues to be strong. Adobe Analytics, which tracks online spending, says online sales are up nearly 18% to $110.6 billion from November 1st through Wednesday, compared to the year-ago period. Adobe predicts online sales for the two-month period will reach at least $126 billion, surpassing its original forecast of $124 billion. That is American Family News for this hour. For more news and information, visit onenewsnow.com.
The Awakening on Urban Family Talk.
You know, a bunch of people who thought Obama was the Messiah. There are a lot of people who are kind of treating Trump like that.
Bishop E.W. Jackson.
Folks, I'm not looking for a Messiah. I've already got one. His name is Jesus, the Son of the living God. We put our ultimate trust in him. All other human beings are fallible.
The Awakening, weekday mornings at 9 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Two Christian artists in Arizona could face jail time if they refuse to make custom artwork for same-sex weddings. The business owners are challenging a local anti-discrimination ordinance that they say goes against their religious values. The Arizona Supreme Court just announced it will hear their case in January.
Tried to create chaos within the election, but certainly not that they actually impacted it. The only reason that the president is the president is because he was a better candidate and beat Hillary Clinton. We also know that the president never colluded with Russia. So that's the whole reason that we have this, and we know those things to be false.
100%. Because when you ask voters, when Trump talks about a wall, do you think he means a physical border wall, or do you think he means enhanced border security that will include a wall in part, but will also include stepped-up surveillance? Democrats think he's talking a wall. Republicans, a majority of them think it's kind of this mix.
Now, Stacey Washington.
No, we don't. Republicans don't think it's a mix. We think it is a physical wall. And we think that we also want extra money for Border Patrol to protect themselves. And we want drones. Yeah. We want money given to them so they can do their job. I mean, if that's what you mean by a mix. But no, I don't know what the president was tweeting. If he's trolling his naysayers when he said we're talking about big, tall slats that you can see through. I don't know what he meant by that. And you know what? Honestly, again, I guess I'm telling on myself. I have just decreased the amount of time that I spend on Twitter. I don't think it's as useful as it could be. Now, I still stream to Periscope there. And I still send out articles there and interact somewhat. But the obsessive amount of time I used to spend on Twitter, I'm devoting that time to other pursuits. And I think I'm the better for it. I think it's actually lifted my spirits up, not getting into these horrible back and forths with people who are strangers with 315 followers who are only there to insult me and drag me down. And so if you're on Twitter and you're enjoying it, God bless you. And I'm glad. I'm happy for you. I wish it could still be the case for me. I'm still there. But it's not the same amount of interaction anymore. And I don't think I'm losing out by doing it this way. I think over time, our decisions on how we interact with certain things change, and that's perfectly fine. I do enjoy the YouTube interactions during the show, and I'm hoping that we're going to have a really good. I hope we're going to have a really good, like transition from there to the streaming to Stacey on the Right, because I think if we have a place where people can chat in real time, it should be fun for listeners who come to us in that way. So this hour on the show, we're actually, because I had a little bit of a mix-up last hour where I thought Paris Dennard was coming on during hour one. He's actually coming on this hour, and then right behind him, we're going to have Maria Espinosa, who's the National Director of the Remembrance Project. Remember, this is an organization that memorializes Americans lost to illegal immigration crime, crime by illegal immigrants. She's going to come on and talk about the wall funding, and she's an expert. She's been on the show before, so I'm excited about speaking with her. But right now, I guess we have to talk about the prison reform, and we also have, in addition to that, this another Facebook breach. And this is becoming so regular, so routine, that I'm afraid it's going to be one of those, like some of the stories that we've seen, we see them happen so often that people are no longer outraged. And that's a shame, because some of these stories really deserve our outrage. And Facebook is one of them, because there's a level of addiction that's involved with Facebook. It's addictive. It was created to be addictive. And once they've got you, they've got me, because I have so many of my pictures and things there that, it's documenting the entire time I've been on Facebook. There's been a lot of milestones in our life with the kids that are there. It doesn't mean those pictures aren't elsewhere, because I had to have taken those pictures from somewhere in order to post them to Facebook. But they are kind of chronologically posted there. Now, my mom was really interesting. Last time my mom was in town, she showed us, actually, no, I was in Washington, D.C. I was there to go to the White House one of the times earlier this year. And I visited my parents, and she had one of those books that they were advertising for a time. It's a book that comes from your Facebook memories cache. And what you do is you select, and it prints the book out in chronological order. And I don't think there's a limit to how big it can be, because hers was pretty big. And as I flipped through, it had milestones because my mom travels a lot of trips that she took with my dad and with her twin sister and with her extended family, trips that she'd taken where, me and my kids were present. All those pictures were in there. And it's kind of like, if you think of Facebook into a book, it's exactly that. Maybe getting those done would help people with actually letting go, but it doesn't take the place of the fact that you don't have anywhere else to go to kind of connect with people, like, let's say, people you knew in high school, your best friend from 6th grade, college alums that kind of stuff. It makes it so that you can't connect with them if you're not on Facebook. But some people are rightly outraged by these stories. And, I didn't realize we had people who'd held over on the call lines. Perfect. Well, what we'll do is, before we talk about the prison reform package or the Facebook thing, we'll carry on with our topic about the border wall. Sarah, thank you for calling into the show today. What's your comment?
Hi, Stacey. Thank you for taking my call. I'm calling in regards to the border issue. I do support funding, primarily because I consider this to be an inhumane act. I personally am holding Congress responsible for their procrastination in bringing this to a vote. We now are seeing that, and it's been for years. I live in Texas, and it's been for years that people with miles that own ranches coming up the south portion of Texas have walked across dead bodies numerous times. Mm-hmm. But now we have the media, bringing this to a national attention. And I consider that any act to not progressively pursue bringing a stop to immigrants coming across our border is perpetuating an inhumane act of the loss of death to people, as well as violations, which there are multiple violations that have occurred across the Texas, lower southern part of Texas. That women and children are the primary victims of these atrocities that have taken place. And to me, it is a humanitarian step forward, and I would have to say at this point, I believe President Trump was not my choice of president, but I am now convinced that he is probably more humanitarian than our Congress is.
I agree with you, Sarah, and thank you for calling, and especially the sharing about the ranchers and the dead bodies and all of that. We've talked about that a little bit on the show. I actually was surprised to learn about that. You just don't connect it up. You don't think of it. We're so blessed here and so civilized, and we just don't have these kinds of things as what we would consider to be normal operations in our country. But we do have tens of thousands of acres of land in Arizona that is protected land. It's federal land that is a part of our national park system that is now completely obliterated. Each illegal immigrant leaves behind about 8 pounds of trash. Between the tire tracks that have destroyed the natural landscape and the illegal immigrants going through and, as you said, leaving trash and dying there, they've completely ruined this, pristine landscape that was to be preserved as a part of our national treasure of lands that are federally owned and protected by the U.S. government. And that's not it. I mean, we could do whole shows about the negative impacts of illegal immigration. And I'm saying that with the full knowledge that you could very well be living next door to an illegal immigrant family that is kind-hearted and sweet and gives you, cookies or, invites you over for dinner, or what. These could be fantastic people. It's not about that. How many people have we met that we find out later they've got some persistent thing that they do that's illegal, and they're struggling with it, or they're prosecuted for it, and you're just like, wow, I can't believe that. It was the nicest family, the nicest person. Oh wow, you never would have known that. Everyone who breaks the law doesn't have to be an evil Hitler-esque type person. That's not the way this thing works. But the fact is, if the laws are being broken, the laws should be enforced. And that is what we're not seeing from Congress right now. Thank you for the call. And so I want to just get this out of the way. It's like a spoonful of medicine that I don't want to take. But I found this audio of Van Jones. And you guys know I was kind of on the fence. At Project 21, we came out with some very strong concerns about the prison reform package. And it feels to me like, just from where I'm sitting and from talking to people back channel, that the prison reform was one of those, yay if you do, oh no if you don't. There was no happy medium. And since President Obama didn't tackle it for precisely those reasons, he didn't want to tackle prison reform because he would have been painted as being soft on crime, and he couldn't afford that, not if he was going to get reelected. And the other reason he couldn't tackle it is because he just doesn't care. He doesn't care about that. Now, President Trump has a son-in-law, Jared Kushner, whose father went to prison. And that radically changed the way that Jared Kushner, who grew up, in an elite family in Manhattan, going to the best schools, always having the best things, best vacations, best home, he had his family torn apart by his father's wrongdoing and incarceration. And it made him a different person. And so that's why he was so interested in doing prison reform. But it doesn't, just because Jared Kushner has that heartrending story from his childhood and his father's incarceration, and others that are working on this have similar good aims and goals in trying to get this done, it doesn't mean it was done right. It doesn't mean it passes muster with communities that will be negatively impacted. And that's what we were primarily concerned with and remain concerned with through Project 21. So my hope is that it won't be just riddled with unintended consequences, and we won't see an uptick in crime, but it remains to be seen what the reactions will be to it. So I just want you to hear this audio from Van Jones, because he says something that directly contradicts what our guest from earlier this week. Remember when we had the guest on, she said, I'm a liberal, but I worked with people in the White House to get this done, and it changed my perspective. It was Jessica Jackson Sloan, a human rights attorney, co-founder of Cut 50. She said it was not a blanket across the board cut in time served for people, but that's not what Van Jones says. It's number 3.
Political parties came together to do something to try to begin to reduce the number of people behind bars for too long. And what this bill does is unbelievable. It means that 100% of people who are behind bars in the federal system can stay out of trouble and come home a little bit sooner. Half of them can work hard and earn their way home sooner. 100% of the women behind bars can no longer be shackled when they're giving birth and mistreated. 100% of juveniles can no longer be put in solitary confinement. And that horrible crack cocaine disparity where 100 to 1, if you had crack and powder cocaine are the same. You put a little baking soda in it for the hood, it's called crack. Your yacht club with the powder is called cocaine. Of the 100 to 1 that you were sentenced worse with crack, Obama was able to pull that down to 18 to 1, but they wouldn't let him make it retroactive. Tonight, the Senate voted to make it retroactive.
So there's a lot that he said there. The not shackling women who are giving birth, you know, I think that's a good thing. There are a few things in there that I was like, okay, that doesn't sound so bad. It just remains to be seen what the outcome will be. And I don't know. I don't even pretend to be able to see what's around the next corner. I don't know. We have to be prayerfully we have to be running to the throne of grace and praying that God would minimize the unintended consequences and that rehabilitation coupled with the gospel would change lives. Because our goal as Christians is not to get people out of prison early. It's to get them to Christ. It's not to, all of these things are fantastic. It's good to accomplish any goal. But in the end, who's coming to the Lord? And those of us who already know him, how are we growing and becoming stronger in our faith walk? That has to be the end question, the beginning and the end, actually. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Paris Dennard, political commentator and GOP strategist. Stay there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. 2019 is upon us, and we're going to be going back to Washington, D.C. and to Williamsburg for our spiritual heritage tours. And if you've been wanting to go, maybe this is the year for you. These tours fill up several months in advance, and one of the reasons they do is because we have an actual historian, a professional historian that comes on our tour with us. His name is Stephen Mcdowell. He's the president of the Providence Foundation, and he knows more about early American history, especially the Christian influence on early American history. He knows more than anybody I know. So, if you want to go with us, you can find out more information at spiritualheritagetours.com. That's in June and September. Pick the month you want to go. Find out more information at spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, it is estimated that Charles Wesley wrote over 6,500 hymns. Perhaps his best-known hymn is Hark, the Herald Angels Sing. Over the years, it has been edited slightly, but the meaning and theology remains as he wrote it more than 2 centuries ago. It begins with a proclamation of the birth of Jesus. Hark, the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. The hymn reminds us why Christ came to earth. Jesus came into the world to bring peace, but many who sing this song fail to realize that it was to bring peace between us and God. Wesley's hymn reminds us that his birth was so that God and sinners could be reconciled. We are the sinners in this hymn, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have broken God's commandments and need to be reconciled with God. This was done when Christ died for our sins. This hymn by Charles Wesley goes on to describe who Jesus Christ is. Christ by highest heaven adored, Christ the everlasting Lord. Late in time behold him come, offspring of the Virgin's womb. Veiled in flesh the Godhead see, hail the incarnate deity. Pleased as man with men to dwell, Jesus our Emmanuel. This is the wonder of the incarnation. Jesus became the offspring of the Virgin's womb. God became man and was veiled in flesh, even though he was the incarnate deity. This Christmas week, let us all once again reflect upon the incarnation, how wonderful yet mysterious that God would become man and dwell among us, and that he would be willing to die on a cross for our sins. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
So, yeah, we are going to be talking now about this Facebook story. I'm just so annoyed with Facebook. I'm so annoyed that they can't get it together. It's just ridiculous, and it's intentional. So first, an update. Can I just update y'all real quick? I have a good friend on Facebook, Michelle, who keeps me updated on a whole bunch of stuff, and it's so cool. And she has been watching the page for the We the People Will Fund the Wall page. Remember the GoFundMe account we talked about yesterday on the show? Well, guess what? Yesterday it was at 1 million. It was less than, well under 24 hours old. Now it's at, so this is her, she says this is quicker than Congress. 8 a.m. 3 million, 11 a.m. 4 million, 1 p.m. 5 million, 3 p.m. 6.2 million. So the wall funding page stands at 6.2 million. Now, 6.2 million is indeed a pittance in comparison to 5 billion. But for the American people to raise that much money, and, we're talking about one day, come on, we're going to get this thing done. I love it. I love the way it's the people doing it. So I actually need to, while we're doing this, so we're having trouble with our guests, but what I'm going to do is take this number. My associate producer has just sent me a little number here, and I'm going to shoot that over to my producer. Jason is here in effect mode, taking care of business this week while Devin's on vacation. So, we have the best people. We're American Family Radio. We have the best people. So we're going to get this thing taken care of. And we're going to make sure that we can get our guests. But right now, so the Facebook story. So you're wondering, what else can they breach? What else can they breach? Well, remember when they offered users a privacy wall? They said you can have a privacy wall if you want to, if you want to opt in to having your information shared, you can do it. But if you don't want to opt in, then you don't have to do it. So in other words, your privacy is under your own control. And they said, what we'll do is we'll wall off your privacy so that you can feel safe again. And, if you feel safe, then you'll want to stay on Facebook and you'll want to interact. Well, for years, Facebook has given some of the world's largest technology companies more intrusive access to users' personal data than they previously disclosed. They effectively exempted those business partners from the usual privacy rules, and this is according to internal records and interviews. The internal records show that the social network had arrangements with Microsoft, Amazon, and others. And doesn't it make sense? How many times have you had a message where you're messaging back and forth with someone and they suggest to you, or it doesn't even matter if they suggest, you're messaging back and forth with someone on Facebook and you say something to the effect of, well, I probably could use a, kerfluffler, whatever that is. And then all of a sudden, Amazon's advertising kerflufflers to you from 4 sellers, and you haven't searched it. So this is beyond search. Or you've been near your phone back when you had the Facebook app, because I used to have it. I don't anymore because they don't know how to control their developers. So I don't have the Facebook app on my phone. But it used to be that I would have my phone nearby and I would be talking with a family member about something that, Mom, I need to buy so-and-so. And I'd say, oh, well, we probably need to head to so-and-so. That item would start to be advertised to me. And I'm like, how are they doing that? That's like magic, because I didn't search it. I didn't have a chance to search it yet. I just talked about it near my phone. Well, I got tired of that, so I deleted the apps for Twitter, for Facebook. That makes it so that I can have some peace of mind. And I'm searching for the most banal of things, like tennis shoes, socks, the kind of stuff teenagers say, I need, and then you go out and that's what you get. But it's still not right. So the special arrangements are detailed in hundreds of pages of Facebook documents obtained by the New York Times. The records were generated in 2017 by the company's internal system for tracking partnerships, and they provide the most complete picture yet of the social network's data sharing practices. Now, Jason, it looks like Paris Dennard is calling in on the call-in line that we give out to people, the 866-963 number. He says it just keeps ringing. So I think that's the way he's trying to call in. So on the social network allowing Microsoft Bing search engine to see the names of virtually all Facebook users' friends without consent, the network gave Netflix and Spotify the ability to read Facebook users' private messages. The social network permitted Amazon to obtain users' names and contact information through their friends. Facebook allowed Yahoo to view streams of friends' posts as recently as this summer, despite public statements saying that they'd stopped that type of sharing years earlier. Now, Facebook has been reeling from a series of privacy scandals, and it's really embarrassing for them. And I think it's ridiculous that everyone keeps tying this to Cambridge Analytica. They did the same thing for the Obama for America campaign in 2012 and 2008. So let's please stop acting as if Facebook has just recently become this doer of wrong deeds, or that these scandals are all recent. This is all old stuff that they've been doing since they started, and they just keep on doing it. And they're not scandals, they're repeated bad behavior. So the documents, as well as interviews with about 50 former employees of Facebook and their corporate partners, reveal that Facebook allowed certain companies access to data despite protections that have been promised publicly. All the deals described in the documents benefited more than 150 companies, most of them tech businesses, but also including online retailers and entertainment sites, and automakers and media organizations. The applications of these businesses sought the data of hundreds of millions of people a month. The deals, the oldest of which date to 2010, were all active in 2017. Some were even still active in 2018. So Steve Satterfield is Facebook's director of privacy and public policy, and he said none of the partnerships violated users' privacy or the FTC agreement. Contracts required the companies to abide by Facebook's policies, he added. Still, the FB executives have acknowledged missteps during the past year. Now, this is another thing that I hate, these stories where they say, Facebook made a misstep. Oh, did they? Is that what we're calling it? A misstep? A misstep is where, through very little or no fault of your own, you're working hard and you end up making a mistake, and business-wise, you have to go back and backpedal. That's a misstep. Repeatedly releasing user data is not a misstep. All right, let's go to our guest. We have Paris Dennard, who's been a frequent guest of the program, is a political commentator and GOP strategist. Paris, thank you for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, we are kind of reeling from news this week, which ranges from the president pulling out of Syria, which I'm not so upset about, to the more serious ramifications of him kind of falling down on the promise to get the wall funded and built during his first term. How do you see things going as we're closing out this week? It's Thursday. How do you see things going for the president?
Look, I think this is a very good week for the president, despite what the media tries to put out there about what he's doing. I think you have to start with the fact that today the president just signed the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is something that was a bipartisan effort, but really led by the Republicans to really get things done for our farmers. But in addition to the Farm Bill supporting that, there's pieces in there that are actually helpful and really instrumental for historically black colleges and universities, mainly the 1890s schools. So there's tremendous funding and support for those schools, much needed, that they've been long trying to have. And so that's a good thing. So the Farm Bill is a good thing for the country, especially with the economic factors that it does with respect to welfare and SNAP programs and things like that. So you have that. Then you have the passing of the bipartisan supported criminal justice reform bill, known as the First Step Act. This is significant because this was, despite what people try to say, a Republican-led effort by a Republican Congress and a Republican president at the pushing of President Trump to get this done. You also saw the president do things when it came to signing of the executive order for Opportunity Zone, which is tremendously going to transform the lives of many communities, over 8,700, I believe, communities across this country designated by the governors to the Opportunity Zone. For instance, the whole state of Puerto Rico, that whole island is an opportunity zone which can have tremendous positive impacts there. Then you come down to what the president is doing right now. It's the question of border security, building this wall or fencing system or whatever you want to call it, this deterrent to protect the homeland on our southern border. The president has been right to push the Congress to make a decision. He has rightly stated that he's not going to sign a bill to fund this government, be it CR or whatever form that they try to use it, if it does not have adequate funding to build the wall. He said $5 billion, which is a small, tiny, minuscule percentage of our total budget, which is in the trillions. We just saw that the government this week said that they're giving billions to Central America and to Mexico to aid in their migrant issues and to help their defense when it comes to security and people coming to the border. Then why can't we do the same for our country? And so I think the president is right. It's a campaign promise, but what he realized when he came to D.C. into the swamp is that he can't do everything by executive order. He's not a king. He's a president. We're a representative democracy. But Congress has to do their job. It's tough. It's difficult. A lot of them have gone home, but we have airplanes. Come back, do the work, get it done, fund the wall, build the wall.
I agree. I was just saying as much a couple segments ago, Paris. That's what planes are for. And many of these elected officials have donors who have private planes who could do a quick turnaround so they could come back for a vote. So the issue should really be, do we have people there who ran on the wall in 2016 but aren't willing to actually make it happen? Because if so, we need to know their names because they need to be sent home packing the next time they're up for re-election. So what about this idea that he would use the military to fund the wall? I'm all about it, but I keep hearing people say that if that were the case, why didn't he do it already?
Well, the president doesn't like to do. The president is one, as you can see by the way he has led the country. He wants people to do the jobs that they're elected to do. And so if the Congress is supposed to do something, like let's just say DACA, he wants them to fix it and figure it out. And he wants to go through the proper channels. So what you see the president do is what he's always done in his life. He's a deal maker. He's someone who tries to find solutions as being a pragmatic solutionist. And so if what he said was, fine, Congress, you don't want to do your job because I don't control the purse strings, you do. So if you don't want to do your job, let me find other alternatives to this. Because remember, when he signed the omnibus bill, they told him that they would fund the wall by the end of the year. And so when they went back on their promise of doing that, well, actually went back on their promise when it came to the first time he could have got this done, when he proposed something for DACA to fix that as well, he said, well, let's find some other ways to get this done for the American people. So what I think you saw the president do is propose a different method to get the wall built, which was funding through funds already appropriated through the other agencies, but namely the Defense Department.
So is it true that if funds are allocated for the Defense Department, I mean, defending the border sounds like defense to me, but is it true that you have to have Congress kind of reappropriate those funds once they've been appropriated if you want to use them for something? I thought it was just, hey, it's the defense budget and they allocate it however they want. Isn't that the case?
Well, it all depends upon how the lawyers interpret how the laws are written. These laws are written with so much fat in them, number one, and they're also written with so many loopholes in them to allow them to take advantage and do different things. So you won't have things so specifically described to the detail and to the T in these bills. There's a bit of discretion. And so I believe the way the White House is interpreting a lot of the discretion that's in these budgets and things that are passed are that these laws that are passed are that, yeah, if the money's already appropriated for the Department of Defense to do X, Y, and Z, part of those things, there could be a line item to fund a wall to protect the country and use that wall as to say that it is a part of a defense system.
Mm-hmm.
That defense system could be a plane, it could be a missile, it could be a wall. And so there's just how you interpret what has already been put into the law. But the way they're written, there's a lot of leeway and a lot of discretion that's involved, and it's just all about the interpretation of it,
well,
and how and if that can pass the muster in the courts if it's challenged.
Right. So, Paris, I love the answer because it kind of goes along with what I know from my time on active duty, and my mom still, well, she's retired now, but she worked for the federal government for 30 some odd years, and I know there's wiggle room in how money can be spent. But that just brings me back to something I was suggesting a few months ago when the caravans were first announced, and that is, why don't we have a base on our southern border? I know we have peaceful relations with Mexico, but it is an act of war to have 10,000 people marching on our southern border. Why not just build a base there?
Well, I mean, I think there are bases in the region that are there, but I think that's a very valid point. But I think what we have to ask ourselves is, politically speaking, what does that signal to Mexico? In terms of our relations with them. Being that I'm from Arizona, I know how important the working relationships are, and you can even look at how North Korea interprets the DMZ and how when we do military exercises in certain parts of the country in different regions, how other nations take those exercises and those defense drills that we do. And so putting a base on the southern border could be more, it could make sense from a defense standpoint, but it could be very harmful politically speaking. So that's probably why there's been a resistance to it for so many years.
I understand. Well, Paris, thank you for your time today. It's great to chat with you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Paris Dennard, political commentator and GOP strategist. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. We'll have more for you. Maria Espinosa is up next. Stay there.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
Too often I hear people say that they will make a difference later, once they've accomplished more, once they have more free time, once the kids are grown and gone. Don't let your age, your experience, or the call of success get in the way of your mission to touch the world for good. You're in a unique place that no one else occupies. Your family, your friends, and your workplace are all spheres of influence. Mentor leaders don't wait. They look for opportunities to get involved in the lives of people. If you pursue mentor leadership, God will ultimately use you for His good. Every platform you have is important in God's eyes.
Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called TuneIn. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place, Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
Stacey Washington.
And so to this day, I don't eat green beans. If they bring me a plate of food at a restaurant and they've substituted green beans for some other vegetable because the other vegetable is out of season, I will make them bring me a saucer and remove the green beans from my plate and take them off of the table because I cannot abide green beans. And so Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have to sit down to the table and it's loaded up high with green beans, and they have to stay there until they've eaten them all. That's the table they set. They boiled the green beans, they picked them, they snapped them, they put them into the steamer, they've cooked them, they seasoned them with salt and pepper, and now they're on the table with a little side of butter, and that's all they're getting, and they're going to have to eat these until they win.
Stacy on the Right. Weekday afternoons at 2 Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being here. We are now working on getting our next guest. We have Maria Espinosa, who's up next. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Looks like we will not be speaking to her because she's sick. Well, it's that season, isn't it? Oh, blessings, and hopefully she's going to feel better, but we will not be speaking with her today. So let's speak with you. Guess what? It's the last segment of the show, and if you want to call in about any topic, but the wall, the funding of the wall, the president's changing, he's had a few things he's been changing his mind about. We can definitely, we can get with that. He's the president of the United States. We just want to see what we can do to have those campaign. Oh, so she says there's an angel dad who can take her place on the call lines. If you can get him, sure, why not? Let's chat with him. If he's from the Remembrance Project, that'd be fine. But right now, I want to kind of finish covering that whole Facebook deal that we were just discussing. And it's interesting because their apologies are starting to get a little bland. Do you feel that? Like, do you feel like when you like they're getting a little, it's starting to sound, they're kind of like, oh yeah, we did do that. And you're like, you're not supposed to be doing that. And they're like, no, you're right. We shouldn't have done that. Sorry. It's no longer, oh, we are so sorry. Remember when Mark Zuckerberg used to take out the full page ad in the New York Times, and he would, as the head of a multi-billion user community, we want you to feel safe. And if we've given any impression that we don't care about your safety, we want to apologize for that. The whole if I, then I apology, which is a non-apology. I just feel that when, it's just this big, long diatribe, and people would see it and go back to happily posting pictures of their cats and dogs. I'm right there. We don't have cats because I hate cats. I'm allergic to cats. But we have one dog. He's no longer as overweight as he was. He used to be so fluffy and soft. It was like squeezing. It's an indescribable type of a thing when your dog is overweight and you pick them up and you kind of squeeze them, and they make that little teensy whining sound because we have a small dog. And then you can feel all their little jelly rolls. It's so squishy and wonderful, the little fat dogs. Well, he's not fat like that anymore because he was having issues with his patella, which is the little kind of, your dogs have elbows that face to the front, and it's on their legs, and small dogs have patella issues. And so Bentley was so overweight that he was having patella issues. So we had to put him on a diet, and he had to lose lose pounds, and he's done it, and he's been really good about it. It's been such torture for him. But now he's not fat and squishy anymore, but I still like posting pictures of him on Instagram. And so I'll, occasionally, like, now that he's thin again, he can get back into his Santa suit. He has a little jacket that looks like a Santa suit. We're going to put that on him and put that up on Instagram. And so anyway, I'm just as guilty as anybody else. But Facebook, they just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And we just keep saying, oh, okay, do better next time. And they keep going, hey, yeah, right. Anyway. Oh, okay, let's speak to Dan. He's an angel dad. Dan, thank you so much for joining the show.
Hi, Stacy. I'm glad to be here today.
Hi, thanks for doing this on short notice. Apparently, Maria Espinosa is ill, and we are praying for her quick and speedy recovery, especially since the holiday is just a few days away. We were going to have her on to talk about the wall funding hitting, a wall. That's my little title for it. And the idea that the president might actually capitulate to this intransigence by the Democrats. They're blocking him, And the Republicans never really wanted a wall anyway because they're really in, kind of in the pocket of the Chamber of Commerce. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, if you would have asked me yesterday, I was pretty discouraged that it seems like the headlines are changing, Stacey. What I'm reading today is now he is saying he's going to veto. And so we'll just have to wait and see. I certainly hope that that he doesn't back down on this. My son's murderer was deported 4 times, and previous before he ended my son's life randomly at a red light with just out fun shooting. And I think that this is President Trump's hot button issue, and I think that his support is depending on this.
I agree. So I'm so sorry for your loss, and thank you for sharing what your family has been through. Over at the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's place, Emily Zanotti is writing about the president sending the GOP scrambling, and that reflects what you just shared, which is yesterday's headlines were pretty depressing, but today it seems like the president has found, a renewed vigor for defending on this issue, and he says he's going to veto the budget deal if Congress won't fund the wall. What do you see happening after that?
Well, Stacey, I have, to be honest, I have zero confidence in our Congress or our legislative branch. That I don't believe they were ever going to fund the wall, personally. I think it's just as you said. He's got one party that's interested in importing a new voter bloc, and we have another party that's interested in making sure that they don't that they protect the donor, mega donor classes, cheap illegal labor pool. And I think that Americans are just left out, and they are not concerned about the safety of Americans. They just glossed over, families like mine, American families that have been devastated by this. And the whole narrative that the media wants to feed us, and spoon feed Americans, is the poor separated families at the border. They don't want to talk about what real family separation is. And let me tell you, when you spend every holiday at your son's grave, you understand what real separation is.
It's the worst because he didn't have to die. So through no fault of his own.
At a red light.
Yeah, through no fault of his own. He's just simply plucked from your life for no good reason by someone who never should have been here. And which the most interesting thing about it is, these people who come in here illegally, they can go back to their home country and shoot all they want. Instead of killing Americans, they should be in their own home country. I've had people say to my face, and I certainly don't have the same gravitas that you have due to your loss, but I have said in defense of just our national sovereignty, we're importing criminals. We're allowing them to stroll across the border and come in and kill us. And the response from Democrats is always the same. Well, we have criminals too. And I always say in response, well, then why would we want more? And they usually don't have anything to say. Why do we need more? If we have criminals, which we do, why do we need more? Why do we need foreign-born criminals? Why do we need criminals who also need welfare? Why do we need to bring in people who have multiple ways that they're in need of taking from us as well as destroying American lives, beautiful people who didn't have to die, except that we can't seem to get a wall up at the border?
That's true, and one of the most obnoxious argument that I hear, Stacey, coming from the left is, well, they're just looking to make a better life for themselves. Well, my question is, exactly what laws do I get to break if that excuses away? As long as I can just make a better life for myself, do I get to go shoplifting? Do I get to go steal cars? Do I get to evade my taxes? If that is the new standard, that all you have to do is just make a better life for yourself and you can get away with breaking laws, I guess what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And another question is, well, I'd like to ask the left, what border do I cross to keep my family together now? And it's very, very hard for people in angel families and people in my situation to listen to this stuff day in and day out. It's just hard to digest.
It's got to be. It's got to be hard, and it's also got to be disheartening to see people. We're paying them $178,000 a year, I think, and they ran on border security in 2016, and they're still there. And as some of them, this is their last act. They're going home. Other ones will be back in January, but in fewer numbers. Why can't they honor what they ran on? That is infuriating to me.
I think the game they play is they tell us what we want to hear, but when they get in, they get in and they're elected or reelected. Really, what they're going to do is they're going to pander to the mega donors and as you said, the Chamber of Commerce, the plutocrats and oligarchs that run the country. And again, Americans are left out of the mix. And I'm not a legal scholar. I can't tell you how possible it is for President Trump to use the military budget as it's been suggested. You have the Army Corps of Engineers, but I would think if that is possible to do, then that's probably going to be the only way he can do it.
Right. It seems like, yes, the way that he could get it done where Congress could hem and haw about it, they could even pass a law saying he couldn't do it, but it wouldn't get through the Senate, and so he'd actually be able to get it done. Seems like it is feasible, at least.
I would say that it's worth a shot because I believe, I don't know if we're past midnight on this, but we're at the 11th hour, and our country is being torn away from it. Our sovereignty and the way of life that we've enjoyed, and along with this is going to go our rights, our Bill of Rights, our slowly, and I'm not only just grieving from my son, Stacey, I'm grieving from the loss of my country. I'm watching my country being ripped away.
Well, I've been advising our listening audience to, first of all, we have to pray over this issue, pray for strength, and then we also have to get our notepads out, and we have to take notes. And whoever ran on securing the border that isn't voting for securing it now should be removed from Congress. That's what we have to do. And that's only one thing we have to do, but it's the one thing that we know we can do. The other items where we have the Ninth Circuit invalidating the president's orders and all of that, we're working on that. The president is putting conservative judges into the appellate courts and on the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, it's these know-nothing Republicans who won't vote for what the agenda is that it has to be job one for us to get them out of there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just, and here's what it's so scary to me, Stacey, is, that campaigns and a successful campaign is expensive. And it seems to me you either have to have a lot of your own money spend on it, or you're going to have to go through the cabal to get that money. You're going to have to get, a lobby, or you're going to have to get these groups, these PACs. And I'm afraid that the big money spenders are people that are just in love with cheap illegal labor, and they are not concerned. They're not putting the country first; they're putting their company first, and they have to decide, which is actually the goose that laid the golden egg: the country or their company. And I think that the country was the foundation that they built their company on, and that I think it's, in my mind, it's just treason.
It is.
And I just, you're right. This is such a colossal problem that it is. I don't know the answers completely. I can suggest things, but I would say that you need to spend time in your prayer closet, because this might be bigger than us, and it's not bigger than God.
Absolutely.
But it's just one of those things where you're in the belly of the well, and you don't know exactly what the answer is, and we need to be on our knees and praying, because this is a very scary time for our country.
It is. Well, you know what, Dan, thank you so much for joining this show on short notice. We grieve with you the loss of your son. Thank you for the work that you're doing to prevent other families from going through what you've experienced. And I wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
It's been a pleasure. And I want to say something to you. I've been an avid listener since you started on American Family Radio, and I think you're doing an excellent job.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, this is the big job coming up, to do this radio program 5 days a week. It's been a learning experience, and I'm so grateful to get to do it. And thank you for tuning in and for being a part of what we're doing here. We really appreciate it.
Well, God bless.
God bless. Merry Christmas. All right, that's, what can you say? What can you say to a parent who's lost their child? I can't understand what he's gone through. And for those who know that feeling, it's just, I find it to be so enraging that we have to have this going on in our country, and we allow it, but we don't have to have it. But the Democrats want it. And so therefore the rest of us just have to bow down. I refuse. All right. Merry Christmas. I don't get tired of saying it or wearing my little headbands. Today's elf hat brought to you by Kohl's. All right, so that's the show for today. God bless you from the Heartland. Enjoy your evening tonight. Unplug. Back with you tomorrow. God bless.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not